Alright, okay, Wowie, hot out of the gates. We got a time-lapse going on here, and I should probably start off by saying one of the latest endeavors in the Crystal's Wrath development has been trying to get environmental assets going, like pretty much to the point where we're happy calling them final. And the latest of which being these new rocks. We have like 8 or 9 new rock meshes that we can scatter around and build environments out of. So I've just been blocking out this area here. This is the working name for the area is Gemstone Island. I don't know what we're actually going to end up calling it, but this is where Crash will come once he collects all of the colored gem tokens of a particular color. It'll unlock basically a bonus area where you would get to go and collect that colored gem, if that makes any sense. So you get all the yellow tokens. You get to enter the yellow token round, which will get you the yellow gem. Same for the red gem and red tokens, blue gem, blue tokens, and so forth. That's what all these little circular areas are going to be, is like sort of like a colored gem shrine that once you have all those tokens, it'll open up a little thing. I don't know if it'll be like a portal or like a platform you would get on and it would take you somewhere. Something along those lines, though. That's what this area is going to be. It's going to be like the colored gem hub, essentially. And I feel like it goes without saying that realism has never really been what we were going for with Crystal's Wrath. It's, you know, it's going to be pretty cartoony. We want to have it look good, you know, especially for just like some crap that 2 dudes made for fun. But aesthetically, we were never really interested in making it fit any sort of reality. I mean, so long as there's a fairly uniform level of quality across the whole game, we're going to be pretty happy. Which is easier said than done when you've been working on a game for however many years now at this point, and you're learning new techniques and methods every single day, and building skill, and the things you made a few years ago don't exactly match the things you made yesterday, and it usually ends up falling into this loop where you have to go back and remake things you made in the past that don't look up to snuff anymore. And that's always been a really big challenge, and right now the current workflow is basically anything we make in terms of like art assets, by the time we check them in, we have to be 100% on board with calling them final. Like if we have absolutely no opportunity to ever come back and redo any assets or tweak anything, we have to be fine with that. So like by the time we check it in, it has to be 100% right out of the gate. And trying to move far, far away from the idea of any unique placeholders at all. And I know that seems obvious, but when you're making a game and you're just trying to have fun and make cool things, you kind of lose sight of that, and it ends up hurting in the long run to have to go back and redo everything. So putting in the extra effort in the beginning saves a lot of time later on. So with that all out of the way, we have new rocks. They're pretty versatile. I don't know if it comes across very well because of the time lapse. We do have a custom shader on the rocks. As you move and scale them, the texture is aligned to the world, if that makes any sense. Like, if you make the rock bigger, it won't stretch the texture with it. It'll stay fixed. So as you scale up the... I'll just put up... Here's a clip of it. There, it's hard to explain. It's magic. It's a texture projection kind of thing going on. So yeah, you can rotate and move and scale the rocks, and it always tries to keep the texture looking as natural as it can, and also helps sell that there might be more variation going on than there actually is. And we use that all over the game. It also helps hide seams and that sort of thing. Just another one of those tricks you pick up over the course of doing this for a few years. It's not exactly the cheapest shader in the world, but I haven't noticed any performance hit at all from it. But yeah, basically what I've been doing here is just going back and forth between broad, you know, coarse, big blocking of rock walls, and then coming in and doing some finer detailing. We haven't really had rock models like this before in the game, and so I'm just kind of learning as I go and just seeing if I can get any interesting looking results. And personally, I just like to, as I'm working, play the level frequently and walk around and get an idea how it feels and how it looks from the game camera in the areas that you're supposed to see it. And then, you know, fly around and get a look at it from different vantage points that you might be able to see it from, and see if that gives me any ideas of maybe where to go with it or what to change, what I like, what I don't like, that sort of thing. You gotta go for those Disney sightlines. But yeah, as I already mentioned, this is going to be like the colored gem hub. You'd come here once you get all your tokens. You could come over to one of the colored shrines and have that trying to get your colored gem. And I was basically going for like a layout where like a sort of hub and spoke kind of design. You would either come on the island from the north or the south beach, and you would come into like a main area. There's nothing blocked out for it yet, like a central kind of area. And then there would be 5 trails that go off to each little shrine. As you can see, I'm starting to block some of the rock wall coming off one of the beaches here. I don't have like a paper layout or anything in particular planned that I'm going for. I have an idea in mind, but I'm just basically doing it as I do it. And that's just how we work on the game in general. Any creative energy you might put into doing it on paper first, you might as well just do it in the editor, because then you have a playable result where you can iterate a lot faster and not just a piece of paper that you're going to end up having to build anyway. You might be flying a little blind at first, which is daunting, but it's far more effective, at least in our experience, to just start building. But yeah, as I was saying, I'm just trying to get stuff blocked out here. This is sort of a new construction method for me, having these smaller parts and building bigger assemblies out of them in the engine. And yeah, just trying a few different methods with it. As you can see, I'm trying to cap off this one little mountain here. It's like hollow inside. And other ones I blocked out more like, you know, building up vertically in slices. So those ones have rocks placed in there that, for the most part, you're never going to see. So far to me, it seems like building hollow, you kind of have to go back and fill in a lot of gaps just so you can't see straight on through into the nothingness inside. I found that to be a bit more of a pain in the ass because you have to put something there to fill it in. And that just took a little bit more tweaking to get it to look the way I wanted. Whereas if I did have some kind of base rock inside, then I could just have the option of maybe not having to fill it in, because there would still be some kind of substance in there where it wouldn't really be a big deal if you saw inside. So it just seems a little bit less flexible building it hollow. But moving right along, just starting to build up this fork in the road section in between these 2 shrine areas, I guess you could call them. And I'm sort of just determining how high I want these rock walls to be. In the end, I do want these trails to be fairly isolated from each other while maintaining somewhat of a natural flavor to the formation of the rocks, where each trail is still a clearly defined area without seeming too deliberate, but at the same time not seeming too random, sort of curated by nature. And you can see here I just tossed in this real quick little landing platform area. I don't really know what's going to go there yet. It just seemed like a neat little place to have something like that. Maybe throw a couple crates on there or some mojo or something. I kind of like that method of working where you just kind of like let it speak to you as you're building it, and then you can figure out what kind of goodies to put in there later. So I'm sure we'll find something to use that for. And watching this footage back, to me it really doesn't look like the most efficient way of working, because I keep going back and forth between these bigger brush strokes of like just plopping down big rocks to define something, and then getting a little sidetracked and coming in and doing the small little rock work details. But I guess that's just the way I do it. I don't really see much of a point in stifling the creative flow by forcing myself to do it any particular way, so long as it gets done. I mean, ideally, you'd probably want to do a quick, big, chunky, blocky pass, and then once you're happy with that, come in and do all your small details, but it is what it is. Plus, personally, I kind of think it helps kind of inspire what direction to take it in when you have a little bit more fidelity in it right off the bat. Of course, the problem comes in if you decide, nah, it sucks, we need to change something later on. You end up having to throw out a whole lot more work than if you had just done the quick, fat, blocky pass. I guess it's really just sort of preference in what your workflow really calls for. This particular area, for instance, I just decided I was going to make for the hell of it. It wasn't really even on the docket, just because I kind of wanted to. And I don't really think there's anything that's going to happen with this where it needs to change. It's not really gameplay critical. It's just sort of a place you hang out. There's not like, you know, any intense platforming that needs to be well thought out or anything like that. So I ended up just going for it. And I actually ended up pleasantly surprised on how good a lot of this looks. I'm actually a pretty big fan of how the fine rocky details around the edge of these platforms ended up looking. Like I said, these new rocks seem pretty versatile, at least so far. I haven't noticed any major problems working with them for a few hours at this point. They do have a pretty wide range that you can scale them to, and they still look good. There's an optimal kind of size for them. Obviously, you don't want to make them too big or they look dumb. And I haven't really ended up scaling them down to a point where it seems like they're too small. If it's to the point where it's like microscopic, I just would kind of debate whether that detail is even necessary. Environments have always been on the kind of tricky side. We're still working on the best way to do them. I mean, it really depends on what it calls for and what it is. We have things built into UDK like the terrain tool, which just lets you paint real quick landscapes. We decided pretty early on we probably weren't going to use that. It doesn't really give the kind of results we're looking for. We're trying to do these more smaller, detailed, up-close, tailored environments, and the terrain tool just didn't really lend itself to that very well. We've mostly settled on building a range of generic ground planes in 3ds Max, and then bringing that into UDK and building the bulk of it, like rocks and trees and all that sort of thing on top in the engine. Then if we need a custom piece for like really specific thing, then we would go make that in 3ds Max again and then bring it in. Of course, there's also BSP, or CSG rather, but that's always been kind of a pain in the ass to work with, especially for anything besides like rigid buildings and stuff. Nevertheless, this is where I decided to call it. This is as far as I got in the first shift of working on this. And I just thought it'd be good to include a nice up-close, not sped-up look at it. Also probably gives a better idea of the scale of the area we're talking about here. I feel like the blend between the bigger rocks and the finer details is actually looking pretty good. There's a couple of big honking rocks still sticking out. I feel like that's probably fine for variation, but they might get covered up a little bit more at some point. There's a couple obnoxious ones still that are just still from like the initial blocking pass, and those are gonna get covered up as we build onward. You didn't get to see me building this area. I didn't think to record until I was done with this. This is just like a placeholder of like that gem shrine I was talking about. It's not gonna look anything like that. That's just one of those rocks, and I just threw a gem shader on it. You also didn't see over here I started on prior to recording. But I want to hear from you guys. Do you think a video series like this would be interesting? Would you watch that? The process of building out an entire area, but time-lapsed with post-commentary? I'd like to be able to make more videos showing the process of making stuff, but it's just still trying to work out the best format for it, and something that's obviously not going to take a whole lot of time away from working on the game to make videos instead. The priority is working on the game. It's still just trying to figure out the best way to get video content out of it. I thought real-time commentary might kind of catch on, but those get really long and boring, and I feel like that series for the most part has done nothing but bomb. And First Impressions really hasn't done much better. I mean, maybe it could just be us. Don't get me wrong, making games is really cool and interesting if you have the patience for it, because a lot of it is real slow, kind of boring, tedious work that's not always that much fun to watch. But I want to know, how would you guys want to see Crystal's Wrath content? Should it be some time-lapse with post-commentary, maybe drop a real-time commentary once in a while, do a First Impressions, like, you know, kind of like a smorgasbord? What would you guys like to see? Let us know in the comments, please. And after you do that, make sure you go ahead and watch some of our other videos. They're pretty good. Thanks for watching.